I know every operating
At my
system like
last
the
job,
back of
in
my
my current
hand.
role,
I when it comes to
5 years of
IT.
experience and have worked with several people from your company. I've been recognized for my passion. My team is everything.
LinkedIn delivers candidates who rise above the rest. With an up-to-date view into shared connections, skills, and interests you won't find anywhere else. See why 86% of small businesses who post a job on LinkedIn get a qualified candidate within a day. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/achieve. LinkedIn, your next great hire is here.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast, Dives. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Dives, how are you doing today?
What's going on, guys? Glad to talk shop here. You look at Josh Sweat, you look at Milt Williams getting the bag during the Super Bowl. Maybe we double dip on the defensive line in the first 2 rounds. We're going to be, at least me specifically, are going to be talking about the top D-line prospects heading into the first round.
All right. I am also joined by his co-host on Party on Broad. It is Ryan. Give him a follow on Twitter at Philly Sports PSA. Ryan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Obviously, still feeling the high from the Eagles Super Bowl victory, but the work doesn't stop there. We don't rest on our laurels. We're going to be drafting the next Cooper DeJean to this team shortly. So let's get at it.
I almost don't want to cover the draft this year because I will never hit a draft better than I did last year, where the 2 guys I was in love with were Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And I was like, please just let the Eagles get one. And the Eagles got them both. That's never going to happen for me again. I should go out on top. But here we are, Mark. And also joined by Mark, my co-host on Chalk Talk, which is kind of merging with this show for our pre-draft content. So Chalk Talk won't show up in the feed for a little while. We'll be on here. We'll be back after the draft to get into our off-season shenanigans like NFL expansion teams and all of that. But Mark, how are you doing tonight?
I could not be doing any better. I mean, we are how many days away from a parade here? 4 days away now. I'm just counting down the days, counting down the hours until I'm on Broad Street. I'll be Ubering to the parade at 3 a.m. to camp out my spot just for the folks out there who think they're going early. I'll be there earlier than you.
You are going early.
That is early. So, well, let me tell you guys what we are doing today. We are kicking off our draft coverage. It's been a while since the Armchair Scouts has been in your feed since the college football playoff concluded. Tonight, we are going to each give you 5 guys we think could make sense for the Eagles in the first round. There may be some overlap. That's fine. But we're going to sort of just talk about some players that could fit and why. And then next week, we will start bringing you once a week a position breakdown. So we'll go through and rank our top 5, top 8, whatever it may be, and we'll give scouting reports on those guys. So you guys can be prepared. We'll get through every non-special teams position group prior to the draft because I am still refused to do kicker scouting reports. And so, guys, let's dive into it. And I'm going to lead us off here. I'll give my first guy. And Mark tells me this one's the one that's probably a little unrealistic off my list because just a little behind the scenes for you guys. I don't really get a lot into draft stuff during the NFL regular season. So we've hit the sad part of the year for me where I have to turn off the NFL all 22 footage and I no longer get to do that weekly. And now I start diving into draft and I got to play catch up for these guys that have been doing it all season. And so according to Mark, this one's not realistic, but I'm going to talk about him anyways. And that's tight end Tyler Warren from Penn State, who burst onto the scene in 2024. He had 1,200 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns to go along with 218 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. He did some wildcat work as the tight end, and he's really good in the passing game, and he could use some improvement as a blocker, but he is bigger than Dallas Goedert is. And so I don't think this is like a Grant Calcaterra thing where he's just got no hope as a blocker. He's a decent blocker. And you might say you have Dallas Goedert. Why are you even talking about Tyler Warren? But Dallas Goedert's heading into his age 30 season. And he's been often injured. And the Eagles like to run 12 personnel. And you really need tight ends that can block and receive. And I think Tyler Warren can do that. And you look at Dallas Goedert, he has a cap hit next year of $12 million. And the Eagles are on the hook for most of that anyways, but they could save $700,000 if they moved on from him. And then they would be clear of that contract. If he plays out that contract, he also hits the 2026 cap for almost $9 million. And so I think it could be a position, like it makes sense. This is about the time that they moved on from Zach Ertz, and need I remind people, that was when they won the Super Bowl and had pick 32 and traded out of it and took a tight end in the second round. And Tyler Warren's not going to be there in the second round, but I think he certainly could make sense as a position, as a player to target for the Eagles. So that's my first guy that I'm looking at in the first round that I make sense for the Eagles. Did anybody else have him on their list?
I did not. He's easily among like the God tier for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's the tight end one of the future. If the Eagles were to nab him and he falls, but I think he's a top 10 prospect in this draft. I absolutely love him. I've been on the Tyler Warren train all year. The versatility he brings to an offense with Saquon and Jalen and his run blocking and his physicality, he's a total package. I don't think he's Brock Bowers level, but I think he's like right underneath that tier. That's how high I am on Tyler Warren.
Yeah, we got a comment here from Brandon asking if any Georgia guys are going to be available. Spoiler alert, there's a Georgia guy on my list for later. But Dibes, I'll throw it to you. Who's one of the guys off of your list for the Eagles to target?
Yeah, if we're talking like the dream, for me, it starts with Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton is an amazing prospect. His draft stock is all over the place. I have him personally as number 11 on my big board, but I've also seen him fall into the late first round. 78 pressures, 12 sacks the last 2 years at Purdue and Texas A&M. He's only 20 years old, but his pass rush moveset is well beyond his maturity. He's got a well-developed frame. He's an excellent pass rusher, excellent size, strength, athleticism. He's got great versatility. He can go inside and outside. And that kind of starts with some of the concerns. He might have a bit of an identity crisis. Like, what is his best position in the NFL? Is he a linebacker? Is he an interior lineman? Is he your defensive end? You want guys with size as a down lineman, but his most productive season came when playing a lot of outside linebacker. I'll leave that one up to Vic Fangio. But I think this guy has 3 down upside. I think there's some boomer bust appeal about Nick Scorton. So there is some concern. Maybe that causes him to drop. But when it comes to attacking the passer, he's got an amazing pass, a spin move. He's got a lot of different ways he can, get after the QB. He still needs to develop more technique. He still needs more refinement, which is perfectly normal for a 20-year-old. Top to bottom, I think when it comes to run stop, when it comes to pass rush, I think Nick Scorton is the total package and would just fit beautifully with the way the Eagles like to go inside out with their defensive linemen.
Yeah, Nick Scorton was actually also on my list, and you mentioned that he's only 20 years old, and that's a big deal. It would also be nice to just have a piece that is bigger than like Jalix Hunt / Nolan Smith on the edge. Like, he has like 30 pounds on Jalix Hunt and 50 pounds on Nolan Smith. And not that the Eagles struggled against the run this year, but having some more size on the edge would be a plus, especially with, Brandon Graham, I would imagine, is going to retire. Who the heck knows what's going to happen with Bryce Huff, but it doesn't look very good there. And so you just saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl by dominating the trenches, and the Eagles love to pick the trenches. And I think going edge rusher is I think going edge rusher is a pretty likely outcome for the first round. So he was on my list as well. Did anybody else have Scorton?
Yeah,
Brian
I did. Yeah, exactly. And Dives said it perfectly. The thing that is super noticeable is that darn spin move of his. It's like the quickest thing I think I've ever seen. And he's a bigger guy. Again, he's like 285, and he just has such amazing athleticism. He really has a nice arsenal of moves, and man, would just come in, and just, I think, with the uncertainty of Sweat and Milton Williams and Bryce Huff and Brandon Graham, and there's 4 guys right there on the line that you have questions about whether or not they're going to be coming back to this team or playing, those roles. But I think edge is such a super important role. And he seems like he would be an amazing pass rusher to add to Vic Fangio's arsenal of weapons.
Yeah.
I haven't been as crazy on Scorton. I felt like he was taken out of a good amount of games, only finished with 4 sacks this year. So I did feel like when he translated over from Purdue to the SEC, the production went down. Still got a lot of hurries and pressures, kind of the same along the same lines as Purdue. So maybe that's an overblown concern. But you guys know me. I feel like when it comes to edge rushers, I'm looking for 2 things, and it's like heavy sack production and 6'6" plus in the height department. So 6'4" and not a ton of sack production. I like Scorton. There's another D lineman who I think will probably come up on this pod who I'm fully out on. I'm not fully out on Scorton. I'm just a little more skeptical.
The intrigue for Scorton is to kind of have that Brandon Graham role where he can kick inside in certain situations. And I think he would be awesome at that.
Yeah. All right. So that is 2 off of my list and 1 off of Dibes and Ryan's list. Mark, give us one of yours.
I'm going to go with a boring one to lead off. And I had a couple different offensive linemen that I kind of had lined up because I know we're all thinking defense. Lane is getting older. How many years in a row have we talked about maybe Howie, this is the year where he takes the eventual Lane replacement? And I don't know if I think that'll be this year based on the strengths of the draft and But let's just say that they decide sitting at 32, maybe a couple O linemen fall, maybe a couple of defensive guys who they wanted didn't last as long as they wanted. And you'd have to take a look at the offensive lineman kind of class. I think you could do worse than Armand Membo from Missouri, who you guys just mentioned, Nick Scorton. This guy's also 20 years old, Membu from Missouri, and he has 2.5 years of full-on right tackle experience in the SEC. So I think you look at this year, did not allow a sack. You can count on one hand the amount of pressures he had. He was really, really good. It wasn't quite as good his second year playing as he was this year, or even the first half of his sophomore year. But he's super experienced right tackle, grades out well against the run, grades out well against the pass, stands out on film. I think what he was able to do at the SEC, I mean, how many edge rushers from the SEC are being drafted in the first 60 picks this year? It seems like it's a heck of a lot. And I think he went up against a whole lot of them. I know he went up against Scorton. I know that Scorton got him a couple times. He got Scorton a couple times, but they had a heavyweight fight for sure. But Membu's a guy that I actually think there's a chance this is the type of guy who creeps up in the top 10 to 15 of the draft. He's only 6'3.5", 6'4". And there's been a lot of speculation that people think he's going to be better suited inside. The Eagles seem to like that prospect. I mean, Tyler Steen, we've seen it before with other guys where you take a guy who maybe is a tackle or has that tackle experience. Obviously, Mekhi Becton, not in the draft, but in free agency, and you bump him over to guard. Maybe that's a similar thing with Membu. Maybe they take him and bump him over to guard, see if he can be the lane replacement. There's a couple other names I could have thrown out: Josh Simmons, Wylet Milam, a couple other offensive linemen who have my eye a little bit, but I ended up landing on Membu.
That's right. Like the common theme of the offensive linemen is a lot of the top tackles, I think, are more guards in the NFL. And I think Membu is a guy that can be on the outside. His physical measurables, athleticism are ridiculously off the charts. He's going to test really well.
It's funny because obviously, like I just said before, I'm such a size freak when it comes to defensive ends and defensive linemen. But I feel like I'm almost more willing than most for tackles to be 6'3", 6'4". And I think sometimes guys get shifted inside without even really getting a chance to show if they can be that franchise offensive tackle. And I feel like I'm almost always more willing to and same with corners that people think will be safeties. I feel like I'm almost more willing to be like, I don't know, let's let him play what he played well at in college. But obviously some of those guys should be guards at the next level.
I will say the Tyler Linderbaum of this draft is not Josh Simmons and it's not Armand Membu. It's another guy. And I think he's the best offensive lineman. It's not either of those two.
Interesting.
All right,
we'll
Ryan,
talk about it after our five.
All right, Ryan, I'll throw it back over to you. Give us the second guy that you would like the Eagles to target in the first round.
So, Shane, I'm going to piggyback off of your position. While I do think Tyler Warren is rising up boards, I think this next guy, Colston Loveland, is a guy that might fall to the Eagles if kind of things go our way, and if again they decide to go that route. Colston kind of before the rise of Warren was kind of your dead set number one tight end, but and that's because this guy is exceptionally athletic. He's just honestly, you look at him the way he moves and acts like a receiver. That's just, a bigger guy. He's absolutely has some of the best hands in the country. His catch radius is off the charts. But he also is somebody that really is a great route runner and can still, create separation. So definitely I feel like he'd be a guy that would be kind of like your Dallas Goedert. And this is a guy that, again, if you're going to move on from Dallas, or as if you're wanting to, draft the replacement, this is a guy here that could come in and be Dallas Goedert from the get-go. It's right now it's so early. Things will and can change. I do think there's a good chance that he might get drafted before the Eagles pick, but with the way things can go and people shooting up draft boards. I think he might be kind of a recipient of other people kind of jumping him, but not for him falling. I think it's just he's going to be one of those guys that maybe just slides perfectly to the birds at 32.
Yeah, Loveland was on my list too, so that's 3 off of my list now. But I just think he's an exceptional athlete at the tight end position. He doesn't have the stats a guy like Tyler Warren has. He does have a basketball background, which I always love for tight ends, just like I love the wrestling background for offensive linemen. He's not as good of a blocker as Warren. He'll probably test better athletically than Warren. So, he's a guy that I would love. I think he's more realistic than Warren at 32, but he's a guy that I'd be, really happy with as well. Was he on anybody else's list?
He was not. No.
All right. Well,
the tight end class is historic this year. It is really fun. Be on the lookout for our tight end rankings because I am in love with a lot of those guys.
All right. Really deep. Well, Dibes, throw us the second name off of your list.
Second name, I'm sorry, Ryan. I got to do it. And I know this is your boy. Give me Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. You look at Milton Williams and how dominant he was all season long. One of the boomer bust prospects of this class, I have him as a top 10 prospect in my rankings. But who knows? His ability to wreak havoc on the interior is second to none. He's got a lot of alignment versatility. He's a big-time mover at 6'4". The guy is chiseled, man. If you watch the Senior Bowl, he is cut at 6'4", 280-ish. Uber athlete. If there's anything I know about the draft, how he loves these ridiculous athletes. And I think Walter Nolan had some of the best tape of any defensive tackle. And if you look at some of the general consensus, he's kind of down a little bit, and I don't get it whatsoever. He was tied for the team lead in tackles for loss with 14 last year. He was third in sacks with 6.5, fifth in total tackles with 48. He forced 3 pass breakups, 3 quarterback hurries. He had 2 fumble recoveries. In SEC play, he led all defensive players with 12 tackles for loss. You look at the physical tools, you look at the upside. This guy's the total package. I think schematically he would fit so well in a rotation with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. He gives me shades of Fletcher Cox, a guy that can dominate within multiple roles on a D-line, just elite level power, elite level athleticism. If it all clicks and if he hits his ceiling, we're talking all-pro potential. I don't understand why people don't love Walter Nolan.
All right. Walter Nolan on anybody else's list? It's on Ryan's list.
Just missed for me.
All right. Just missed. Ryan, anything you want to add about Nolan before I kick it over to Mark?
Yeah, I would just like to say, Dibes, you son of a bitch.
Sorry, I knew it, but
listen, I hope to return the favor. Walter Nolan is one of my favorite interior linemen. Again, with the uncertainty of Milton Williams, the fact that how he loves his line, this is a clear position that can easily get targeted. And this guy has a great first step. He is a large, massive man that just, plays with amazing strength and leverage. But he also has this quick twitch ability that almost, he's able to kind of change his direction seamlessly, which can be very, very frustrating for interior offensive linemen. So I love the fact that you have the picture of him from I keep forgetting that he started out at Texas A&M. With that defensive line at Ole Miss there, it's easy for any of them to kind of get lost in the shuffle, but he certainly stood out as somebody that just has a nose for the football, and I think he would fit amazing with Jalen Carter on the interior of the Eagles. That's for damn sure.
All right. So that Mark's the only person that's only said one guy. So Mark, give us the second guy off of your list.
I'm going with the guy, and I gave it away. But if I'm going to the edge rusher position, I got to go with the tall guy. Give me Landon Jackson. I've been in love with Landon Jackson for years, 14 sacks over 2 years, 7 sacks in each year. But he was really impressive at the Senior Bowl. So much bend for a guy who's so tall. From Arkansas, and the best part about him is he's been dominant at stuffing the run at the edge rusher position and setting the edge there. So everything you get from the pass rushing game, I'm not going to say is a bonus, but I think his best trait is how good he is as a run stuffer. He obviously is going to get some pass breakups being that tall at that position. But I think I've seen enough from the pass rushing stuff to kind of buy in. Might be a little bit of a project, but I'm definitely I would definitely be interested in kind of sending him to Vic Fangio University and seeing if he could learn a bit.
We got Vic Fangio University and Jeff Stoutland University.
Love it. Love it. We just talked about that on a different show.
All right. Was he on anybody else's list here?
He was not, but I absolutely love Landon Jackson.
Shocked he wasn't on your list there, Dave.
I know. He's been one of my guys for a while. I would be so happy to see him get picked by the Eagles. Like, for all the reasons Mark said, another Senior Bowl winner. Keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mark, give us another one here. Who's the third guy on your list?
This is kind of going a little out of left field in terms of positional need for the Eagles. But I think there's a pretty good chance Darius Slay is not on this roster next year. And obviously you have Quinyon, you have DeJean. Do you really need to spend a third high-level asset, whether that be money or draft pick, on another corner? I don't know. I don't know if that's a good use of resources. Maybe you ride with Ringo or Rogers or something you can get in free agency on the cheap. I don't know what the plan is. Maybe you figure out a way to bring back Slay. But I don't think that this is the deepest cornerback class, to be honest. Outside, I think Will Johnson and Travis Hunter are two of the absolute, top of the draft with a bullet type guys. 2 top 5 guys potentially for me in this class. After that, there's only one guy who would interest me for the Eagles, and it's Benjamin Morrison. I'm obviously biased with him coming from Notre Dame, but I do think that there's a chance how he looks at this guy if he does fall. He was a guy coming into this year we thought was going in the top 10. He gets hurt in week 6. He only played 6 games this season. But I think there's a chance if he falls kind of to the late end of that first round, Howie might look at it as an opportunity to get a guy almost similar to Landon Dickerson, where maybe a guy's top 10, top 15 in talent, but an injury or two, or in Landon's case, more than one injury, but takes him out of the first round into the second round or out of the top 10 and pushes him down into the end of the first round. I think you could see a similar thing with Benjamin Morrison, who, if you look at his kind of the target rate at him and the receptions he gave up and passer rating, it was right in line with his first 2 years there. 29.2 passer rating allowed in 22, 60.8 in 23, 58.4 in 24, kind of the same on the same pace in terms of targets and receptions and yards allowed. But you look at what he did the 2 years prior to this one. He had 6 picks in 2022, 3 picks in 2023. This year didn't display the ball skills quite as much. Obviously only played half the season. But I think Benjamin Morrison is a truly special guy at the next level who's a pretty good tackler as well. I think this is a top 15 draft prospect for sure. And it seems like I'm seeing him ranked outside of the first round from Daniel Jeremiah, from others. He would be a guy that is cornerback the top need necessarily that I would look at 32. No, but I think there's a chance he's the best player available, and you take the swing on let's lock down 3 cornerback positions for the next 10 years.
All right. Was he on anybody else's list?
He was not, but he's in my top 20 draft prospects. He's like in mid-teens for me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dives, give us the third name on your list, and then we'll all be at 3 unless you steal another one of Ryan's.
All right. Number 3 is, I think, one of the more realistic picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. Give me Shamar Stewart, defensive lineman that is climbing up the big boards. 39 pressures, 2 sacks, 15 run stops last year. He's a bit of a project when it comes to being a pass rusher, but he's an excellent run defender. The moment he puts on an NFL jersey, again, if there's any, besides versatility, if there's anything I know about Howie Roseman, he loves raw athletes that are going to dominate the draft process. This guy is 6'6", 290 pounds, and he's going to blow up, the measurables here. Elite length, elite size, dominant block shedder, knows how to set a firm edge. There's going to be some question marks regarding if he's an edge or a defensive tackle. I think with the Philadelphia Eagles and Vic Fangio's scheme, he would fit in perfectly inside to kind of be that Milt Williams edge rusher kind of guy, rotating in there with Jalen Carter. Again, just an elite athlete, a big-time weapon that can be used both inside out. So when you watch the film, this guy is super raw. He is so raw. But I think he's also a guy that will be a first-round pick due to those measurables, due to that length, and due to those physical tools. He needs a lot of refinement. He needs to build his pass rush moveset. At the end of the day, you look at Nolan Smith, a similar kind of guy that had immense athleticism, just needed a lot of seasoning. I think it's going to be up to the coaching staff or whatever team that drafts him that gets the most out of him. But at the end of the day, I think Shamar Stewart is a really fun name to know because he's already an elite run defender. But with that size and that athleticism and that RAS score, I think he's going to be a guy that Howie likes a lot.
All right. Was he on anybody else's list? All right. We've all said 3 then. So I'll kick us off here with the number 4 guy. And these aren't in any particular order, by the way, but another guy that I would be interested in for the Eagles at the end of the first round would be linebacker Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Ryan's making faces. I'm assuming he was on Ryan's list now. Walker was he dropped into coverage and rush pretty equally this year on passing downs. It's about 50-50 split. He had 34 pressures on 194 pass rush reps with 6.5 sacks and 11 tackles for loss. And he's just an impressive athlete who has a quick first step and good bend as a pass rusher. He's good in the run game. He's got good coverage instincts. You can tell that he was only a 1-year starter. He was a rotational player for 2 years before that. And he was asked to do a lot of different things at Georgia. He was asked to be an off-ball linebacker at times. He was asked to be an edge rusher at times. He was asked to blitz as an off-ball linebacker. So I think he would benefit at the next level by focusing on one or the other early in his career. And, over time you can flesh that out some more, but he could be a Zach Bond-like piece for this defense, a guy that you can walk up to the edge late, a guy that you can blitz, a guy that could be good in coverage if he's given the time to do so. And, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but sadly, Zach Bond is a pending free agent. And I would hate for the Eagles not to get something done with him. If they don't, Jalen Walker could be a guy that they bring in that could help fill out this linebacker room. And even if they bring Bond back, I lack a lot of confidence in Nakobe Dean to be able to come off of that injury. And we've seen this year how much having competency at linebacker can make a huge difference. And, maybe this is the year they draft a linebacker and they do it at the back end of the first round. So Jalen Walker is a guy on my list. Ryan, was he on yours? There was a reaction when I said his name.
No, he wasn't, but I wanted him on my list. Let me tell you. The only reason why I didn't is because honestly, I thought the more I keep hearing about him, I keep hearing him higher and higher and higher on draft boards. I don't know if he would make it there right now, but again, still very, very early.
I have a take on he's this year's way different player, but he's kind of this year's Nolan Smith for me. I had Nolan Smith 22nd that year, whereas everybody else I felt like had him fifth to eighth.
Yeah, right.
10, where when we got him at 30, everybody was, and by the way, everybody was more right than I was. He's he just helped us win the Super Bowl a ton there. Obviously, he's more than made up for that pick. But I feel like we ended up getting him at 30, and I was like, oh, I like the pick. But people were like, this is the steal of the draft. And I was like, oh, I don't know. He's a project. I kind of feel the same way about Walker. Like, I'll probably have him like 21st, 22nd.
Yeah, that's probably about where I have him.
When I hear him as like a top 10 pick, I kind of cringe. But then when you hear him as an Eagles target, it's like, oh, yeah, obviously. That would make a ton of sense.
For me personally, I had him right outside of my top 10. I as a guy who watched a lot of Georgia football, I thought he was one of the guys that popped every single game. One of the biggest. I mean, he's right on that tier below the safety Malachi Starks. I love Jalen Walker, and I love the Zach Bond comp where he could be a guy that could blitz. He's athletic enough to drop back. Jalen Walker is one of the best playmakers in this draft. I don't think he falls whatsoever, though.
Yeah. All right. Mark, why don't you throw me another name off of your list?
The third name that I'll go to here, or I guess the fourth name I'll go to, my second guy, is a guy that this is my guy of the draft, and I don't care what anybody thinks about it. PFF has him as like 92nd on their rankings. He came into the year as like a top 10 pick on a ton of sites. He's outside of Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. I don't care. He's a top 10 guy in this draft for me, in my opinion. I'm in love with Deone Walker. I see no scenario that Deone Walker is not going to go to the NFL and be a productive defensive tackle the way that he's able to stuff the run and rush the passer at 6'7", 345 pounds. I just think you could see multiple games that he absolutely took over. That Ole Miss game where Kentucky upset Ole Miss, I think that you can go watch that and see just how much Deone Walker had Jackson Dart. I almost said Matt Corral. Had Jackson Dart freaking out in the pocket. He had a little bit of a down year this year. In 2023, he had 8 sacks with 39 hurries. Had 20 hurries the year before that. But this year, he only had 4 sacks and 18 hurries. But if you watch the film, like the games that he did show up in, he showed up and took over. It felt like there was probably too many quiet games in there. I think a lot of that, and different position, but it reminds me a little bit of George Karlaftis at Purdue. Karlaftis played edge as opposed to Walker playing on the inside. But they're not just not a lot of blue chip guys on that Kentucky defensive line besides Deone Walker. So I think the offensive line was really able to key in and focus on him at every opportunity to just try to take him out of the game and attack elsewhere on that Kentucky defense. And he was still able to make a lot of plays in the running and the pass rush. But I'm in love with Deone Walker. This guy's an absolute freak. I think there's a chance he rises up draft boards, but then I also think that there's a chance people think he's fat. So I don't know. It could go either way. But I love this guy. I really think he's going to be a legit force at defensive tackle.
All right. Was he on anybody else's list?
No way.
He's not. He's not. But
I'm a fan. I'm a big fan.
When he's clicking, when he's locked in, man, he's one of the more dominant players in this draft.
Talk about Vic Fangio University. Oh, my God. I can't even imagine what Vic Fangio would be able to do with this demon.
Yeah.
Membership means more with American Express Business Gold. Earn 4 times membership rewards points in your top 2 eligible spending categories every month, including eligible U.S. advertising purchases and select media, and U.S. purchases at restaurants, including takeout and delivery. What are you waiting for? Get the card that flexes with your spending every month. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
So good, so good, so good.
Get ready, because it's time to save at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through February 23rd, take an extra 40% off red tag clearance boots, jackets, and sweaters. We're talking the best cold weather styles from Vince, Cole Haan, Sam Edelman, and more. All on sale for even less. All sales final. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's gonna be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pop, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
All right. Ryan, give me the fourth guy off of your list.
My fourth guy, this is going to make Mark quite happy. I'm going with Notre Dame safety Xavier Watts.
Nice.
This is a guy that has had a very productive college career. Last year, winning the Nagurski with 7 interceptions. This year, he follows it up with 6. Listen, he's just kind of that, obviously a ball hawk. I mean, this is a guy that finds his way to the football, has great instincts and coverage. And, he's also a punishing hitter, physical, just wrapping up, his tackles. I think he ended up with just over 80 tackles this year. He's certainly a guy that I think the Eagles could use, given the fact that, there's a little uncertainty with Reed and CJ as far as their health all the time. And I think having that third safety would be absolutely fantastic to add to an already stud-filled secondary. Xavier Watts could easily come in and have a huge impact on this Eagles team. And, again, he's also a super, outstanding individual. Everybody says what a leader, what a high character guy, strong work ethic. And we obviously know that's certainly something important for this defense. Brandon certainly thinks that our depth is bad, and it kind of is. I mean, Sidney Brown, again, obviously I know he was dealing with his injury this year, but outside of that, I really would rather not see Tristan McCullum anytime soon. So give me Xavier Watts to build and add to an already studly defensive backfield for the Birds.
Shane mentioned how he's not taking PFF grading seriously going into this draft cycle.
Uh-oh.
And I wouldn't say I pushed back against it because I agree with him in a lot of cases, but I will just say in this case, Xavier Watts, 89.7 PFF grade this year, which is probably correct. He was incredible. 6 interceptions, won the Nagurski. Last year, the year that he had 7 interceptions with I forget how many pick sixes, but it was multiple. 72.8 PFF grade. Last year, 17 point difference in year to year when he had an incredible year the year before that. That's crazy to me. That doesn't make any sense.
That makes zero sense. But
Xavier Watts has been just more than elite the last 2 years. Been the best safety in college football. You can debate whether or not he's better as a prospect than Malachi Starks or other safeties. And I think there's even another safety that stayed in college. That's a really good prospect. I'm forgetting the name right now.
Caleb Downs. I mean,
I was going to say the only guy who came to mind.
Downs is probably the name that I was thinking there. But I think you could say that Watts outperformed those guys on the field and was more important to his team. And you mentioned that he was the leader of that defense, a Notre Dame defense that obviously carried them to the national championship. And Benjamin Morrison was the best player on that defense. Went out halfway through the year, and Xavier Watts kind of held that secondary together. They had a freshman who stepped in, who we're going to be talking about in a couple of years, Leonard Moore. But Xavier Watts did an incredible job kind of holding that defense together.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dibes, that brings us to you. Give us the fourth guy off of your list.
Let's go for another realistic draft target. Give me Mike Green out of Marshall. I don't know if you guys know a lot about Mike Green at the Senior Bowl. He really checked off a lot of boxes: speed, quickness, power, flexibility. Was dominant on one-on-ones, man. If you followed the Senior Bowl, you would see him take down Josh Connerly and just make him look really bad. He led FBS with 17 sacks last year for the Thundering Herd. This might be one of the biggest risers, period, in the entire draft. One thing, strength-wise, that stands out the most, amazing burst off the line of scrimmage, great first step, moves really well for his size. He's got all the athleticism that Howie's going to love, and he's got the pop to drop back in coverage if he needs to. What's up, Jalix Hunt? I think Mike Green is a big name for the Philadelphia Eagles. He needs to learn some counters when it comes to attacking the quarterback. He doesn't have a lot of arm length, but I just think overall he's got the raw talent. He's got the unteachable abilities to be special at the next level. Just a pure athlete that has Eagles written all over him. If you don't know Mike Green, he might not even be available for the Eagles at pick 32. That's how far his draft stock has risen.
I don't think he will be.
Yeah?
All right.
He's a fun prospect.
I'm in. Yeah, I'm in on Mike Green for sure.
All right. Well, let's
6'4".
Ryan, yeah, it's fair. It's fair, Ryan. It's a fair thing to bring up. But 17 sacks, how much he pops off the screen, even when they faced higher level kind of offensive lines, he really popped off. This is a question more for Ryan because I know he has every jersey of every Eagle that's ever played on the team. Has there ever been a green on the Eagles? I'm trying to just think it back in my head. That feels like an obvious. It's like Notre Dame had a defensive coordinator named Al Golden. Feels like
right. Yeah. I feel like there was.
It feels like there had to be.
That's such a common last name.
I feel like.
Shane's not amused by this.
Let me look.
I don't know.
I literally have a screenshots on my phone of the history of the Eagles rosters by number. Just so again, I can always make sure I'm gonna get the right jersey number, but I don't recall there being a green. Honestly, I'll have to look into that.
Howie's got to close the loop, finish the story.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Jamal Green.
Jamal Green.
Does anybody remember Jamal Green?
Does Dorial Green Beckham count?
Boo.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, it's hyphenated, but Green was the name.
I thought he was going to change the NFL. Dorial Green.
I vividly remember Jamal Green. He was selected in the 2003 draft. 2003 draft in the 4th round. So I do remember him.
Love it.
But the question is, did he actually play for us? Did he? He may have gotten drafted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
he had to have.
What round did he get picked?
He was waived 2 years later. He was drafted in the 4th round.
Okay, he did play 8 games in 2004, recording 2 solo tackles and 1 sack.
NFC champion Jamal Green.
I really thought Dorial Green Beckham was going to be incredible too. I thought that was such a steal of a trade.
That's good. That's a good. That was a good find. That's a good find. I got to give you credit. Even if you don't get credit, I'll give you credit.
Yeah, I did try largely to block that era of Eagles wide receiver play from my memory, but
I think before Devontae and AJ, I think I blocked most of the Eagles receiver core.
Did the Eagles exist before 2018, 2017, 2016-ish? I mean, I don't know. Who could say? All right, let's roll on to our last picks here for targets for the first round for the Eagles. I went with interior defensive lineman Derek Harmon out of Oregon.
Ah, yes.
Damn it.
All right.
Love it.
It's always, was he on your list, Ryan?
He was on mine, yeah.
All right, well, we'll talk about him here.
All right, I'm done.
5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss this season after transferring to Oregon from Michigan State. He had 39 quarterback hurries. He's a bit of a 1-year wonder breakout player because he never had a year like this prior to transferring to Oregon. But he's a plus as both a run defender and a pass rusher. And he's got a lot of power in a bull rush. He's got a nice rip move. He plays with good leverage. he needs to build the pass move arsenal out a little bit, but the building blocks are there. And you think about what Milton Williams was able to do this year. And I think Milton Williams is good. I also think Milton Williams is going to get dramatically overpaid in free agency because of how frequently he just got one-on-one matchups because of Jalen Carter. And I think it's vital that the Eagles have guys next to Jalen Carter that can make teams pay for devoting the attention to him that we see the Rams and the Chiefs do. And so Derek Harmon, I would love to see the Eagles go D tackle early in this draft, especially a guy that can rush the passer. Not as concerned about the run defense. It's nice if you can do both, but I think investing in a pass rushing defensive tackle, he could play well above he could perform well above his skill level just because of who's around him. So I think he would be a really interesting pick. Ryan, what do you have on Harmon?
Yeah, this is a guy that plays with a lot of power, plays with exceptional hands. It seems like the power just kind of surges through him. But he's also a very intelligent and an aware player. Play recognition skills, I feel like, are through the roof. He's certainly helpful in the run game, but he's got one of the meanest bull rushes and just able to collapse the pocket in an instant. And I think that quick processing ability is what really stands out and makes him able to showcase his skills physically that, again, are constantly improving, it seems like, throughout the year. So, this is definitely a guy that I would love. Obviously, I talked about, Walter Nolan. I think it's imperative to get the right guy next to Jalen Carter. And that's not a slight on Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis has his place, and that's mostly in the run game. And I would love to see another guy that can kind of get to the quarterback and confuse quarterbacks to where the hell is the pressure going to come? Is it going to come from our edges? Is it coming from the middle? Like what, I want them to be scared of this line, and I think Harmon would easily do that.
All right, so that's Ryan and I's last pick. Dibes, who? Oh,
real quick, Harmon barely missed my list. He like Nolan. I have them tied on my rankings. I have Harmon one spot ahead of Nolan, but both of those, Deion Walker, Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, like I would love for the Eagles, whether it's first or second round, to walk out with one of those guys.
All right.
Same.
All right. Well, Dibes, give us the last name off your list here.
All right. I'm going to go to Toledo. Does anybody know who
the Mud Hens, right, Mark?
Does anybody know who Darius Alexander is? Going once, going twice. I think this guy has Eagles written all over him, and I think he is a first-round pick. The Toledo might not have another gem coming out of this draft. He had 40 tackles, 3.5 sacks last year. It's not going to knock your socks off, but one of the biggest winners of the Senior Bowl, 6'4", 310, defensive tackle, great quickness, great power, all the versatility and wingspan and length you're looking for out of a defensive lineman. He's a better run stopper at this point in time. He's going to need some seasoning as a pass rusher, but he can take on double teams. He can eat up space. Similar to Derek Harmon in many respects. I think this guy is one of those dudes that has immense upside. And we talk about the depth of this defensive line class in 2025. Darius Alexander, I think, is a guy that all Eagles fans should learn about because he's coming. His draft stock is rising, and he dominated the Senior Bowl. Darius Alexander.
All right. So, Mark, bring it home for us. Who is the last guy we're going to talk about on this podcast, the last guy on your list? Who are you keeping an eye on for the Eagles?
I wasn't going to do this guy initially because I thought it might be wishful thinking. This is a guy who was in conversations for the number 1 overall pick in the offseason. James Pierce from Tennessee. I straight up do not understand the draft discourse around James Pierce. Why is this guy falling out of first rounds in some mocks? I think Daniel Jeremiah had him ranked really low. People are acting like his tape this year was significantly worse than 2023. Not to give PFF too much credit. Graded out basically the same. He had 8 sacks instead of 13. He had 43 hurries instead of 28 in the same amount of games. So he was winning on the line, and his pass rush win grade was better. His pass rush win rate was better. He was just not finishing sacks to the same degree, but he still had 8 sacks. It's not like this is a guy who had 3 or 4 sacks. I'm telling you, I think this is a guy who, for me, James Pierce is easily edge 2 in this class. And to me, he's closer to edge 1 in Abdul Carter than he is to edge 3 in whoever else we want to say in this class. I love James Pierce. I think this is a guy who's going to be an all-pro at the next level. He's a top 5, top 7 prospect for me, who I don't think should have fallen from his high perch in the offseason with an 8-sack, 43 hurry season where he stayed healthy and played the full year and led Tennessee to their best defensive year in like decades at this point. I think Pierce is a special player.
All right. Dibes, Ryan, anything you guys want to chime in on him?
Yeah, I only didn't put him on my list because again, I like you, Mark. I'm shocked that he just has fallen out of favor, so to speak, and slipping out of the first round in some mocks. I think who's the guy from the NFL, Chad Reuter,
yeah,
however you pronounce his name. He had him in like pick 40, I think, something like that, 47, and maybe even. It's shocking. This guy, I think is an absolute stud. And I think if for some reason at 32, he's sitting there, my God, I hope Howie breaks both ankles trying to run up to that, podium to get him. So, you don't have to be mean. Jeez.
That feels pretty good on the Jets. Who knows what happened once he got here?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to make of the whole Bryce Huff thing, but that's a conversation for another show and another day. So I hope you guys enjoyed just a brief preview into some first round names to keep an eye on for the Eagles. Like I said, next week, we're going to start diving in, breaking down position groups. We'll give our top 5 or 8 or whatever, depending on the position. And give some scouting reports on those. We should have one of those out a week that'll pretty much get us to the draft. So if you guys are draft sickos, even if you're not, if you just want to know names and who we think are good players and things, please follow along with the coverage. We would really appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us for this episode of the Armchair Scouts. If you enjoy this show or any of the other shows on the network, please hit the subscribe button. You can get all the shows on the Eagles Pinpool Network feed. You can check us out on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. _. And we will catch you guys next week for another episode of the Armchair Scouts.